Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Draft registration becomes automatic. No deal, big move, Vance walks. Wow, Donald Trump says he's going to control the strait. Time will tell. A slave to Israel, that's what Tucker Carlson's calling the Donald. The Pope calling for peace. Donald attacks the Pope. Oh, what the heck is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is America, not to mention a $6 billion dispute. We'll tell you about it all right here. Liberty Roundtable Live. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman. LibertyRoundtable.com, LibertyNewsRadio.com. We're available on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube. We're just everywhere, folks. How's that? Truth Social. All I'm telling you is we're everywhere. All right, the draft registration is a serious story that I believe the mainstream press, in fact, they have reported it, okay? But they report it so little and so behind the scenes that most people don't know. For example, Fox has only reported it, like, I think on Fox News Local 19 or something. ABC has kind of done an explainer in a video one time. Time Magazine, some people have reported, some things about it, but not much at all. This is critical. So draft registration becomes automatic. Yeah, it used to be where you'd have to sign up for the draft when you turned 18. It was a manual process. You can say, well, that's no big deal, Sam. Come on, what's the big deal for that? My response is it's a big deal because you're instantly in. Now they're talking about women being possibly drafted too. That has not passed. But see, each step we get closer and closer. And you know that the war support will start to disappear once people find out the draft registration is automatic. Because every move that moves us towards war, people are going, whoa, wait a minute. It's one thing to think Donald's right to stop bad guys and terrorists. It's another thing when you put my son or daughter on the ground in harm's way, right? So no deal, big move, Vance walks. Trump sends the Navy to Hormuz. Trump says he can just block their ports and everything else. We'll see who's got the bigger blocking ability. But so far, every time President Trump makes a big statement like this, he ends up being forced to back away, etc. I'm quite concerned about it. Now, here's the interesting thing. We all said in the beginning, hey, man, Trump's just doing the bidding of Israel on this war with Iran. And the Israelis all came out, reporters and everybody, and said, no, this isn't about Israel. Iran's the bad actor. They're the front men for the communists in China. This is really about China. Trump's playing, way beyond 3D chess there. He's like 20D chess. And so, Sam, you got to understand. And they went through this whole big old thing. But now you got Israel that won't stop the ceasefire. They're like, hey, these guys at Lebanon, they're not involved in the ceasefire, so we're going to keep bombing. We're going to keep fighting. Ukraine and Russia continuing fighting. Trump trying to get a handle on wars all around the world. But the more you insert yourself in war, the more you get drug into war, and the more you can't back away from war. That's a fact. Now, Tucker Carlson has been speaking out against the war, just like the Pope and others, myself included. Now Trump says, quote, a slave to Israel. Tucker Carlson blasts Trump for the U.S.-Iran war. He's saying the role of the United States is a problem. Well, I agree with Tucker. Carlson on Newsmax and NBC, I guess he had some interviews there. He labeled President Trump as effectively a slave to Israel. Wow. Attributing the U.S. entry into the Iran war to Trump's inability to make independent decisions based on Israel's influence. Well, I kind of think Tucker's right on that, but remember, that's Congress too. Every time Benjamin Netanyahu comes to America, Congress gives the guy a standing ovation. So it's not just President Trump, it's Congress too, Tucker. But you're spot on, brother. Tucker's comments followed Trump's harsh rebuke of war dissenters and his critique of war dissenters. What's a war dissenter? Is a war dissenter the same as a peace promoter? I'm dissenting to the violations of the Constitution. I am advocating for peace. But see, when you call me, what's the difference if I'm a peace advocate or a war dissenter? Which sounds better, see? GOP critics are now starting to say the conflict is contrary to Trump's anti-war campaign promises, see? That's the problem. MAGA's getting torn up over this thing. It's almost creating an internal war, so to speak. It's tragic, folks. Now, I stand with the Pope and other leaders that are calling for peace. How do we back away from this thing? We should have never got involved. Now, how much is a gallon of gas? Truckers are struggling and melting down, going, man, I can't deliver. Diesel fuel up, 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 and away. How much is a gallon of gas for you, my friends? There's a $6 billion dispute now in the news, too. See, whatever the news comes out with, you can't trust anybody. You don't know who's telling the truth anymore, right? Iran says, oh, well, Trump says we're talking. Iran says, no, we're not. Trump says we got a deal. Iran says, no, we don't. Now there's a big $6 billion dispute, folks. Have you heard about this one? U.S. and Iran are giving different accounts on what are called Qatar funds. So there's a bunch of Iranian money in Qatar being held up. Iranian officials now say the U.S. agreed to release about $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets held in Qatar during, these talks. And it's over the Strait of Hormuz and everything else. But a U.S. official denied any agreement, leaving the claim disputed as negotiations supposedly continue. So I don't know. Who's telling the truth here? Is it the American leader that says, no, we don't have a deal? Or is it the Iranian people that say we have a deal? They're going to release the money? Is Donald really going to release the $6 billion? I don't know. You say, Sam, you should trust the United States guys because you can't trust the terrorist Iranians. You know what I'm saying? And my response is I can't trust any of them. I mean, Trump was the guy that told me he'd be out of the war in, 2-3 weeks? Now how far into it are we? 6 weeks? And there's no end in sight? In fact, J.D. Vance, they said they had a deal. J.D. Vance just walked away and said no deal. And now Trump is basically wanting you to believe that we've decimated him entirely. Well, then why is the Strait of Hormuz still closed? Why are the Iranians touting victory? Why are the Iranians saying we will pursue the enrichment of uranium? I'm sorry, we will, pursue the enrichment of uranium anyway. Trump saying, no, you won't. So now the battle's over, the enrichment of uranium and the Straits of Hormuz. What's the battle lines? They won't give, neither will Donald. Both sides claiming victory. Both sides disputing this money thing now. I don't know what the truth is on the money thing. I have no idea. I know that Trump calls for peace and Trump attacks the Pope. What's that about? Why would Trump attack the Pope for calling for peace? Wouldn't you expect a religious leader to call for peace, for crying out loud? Here's the bottom line, folks, with this story about this $6 billion. I don't know whether we're releasing the money or not. I don't know what the truth is. I don't know who to trust. I can't get the facts. That's why we're so cynical, so critical, because we don't know and we can't trust. So since we cannot yet get to the bottom, to the whole truth, this is exactly why we need to call for peace, restraint, and transparency. I'm telling you right now, that's why we've got to call for that stuff. Because, man, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what negotiations are real. I don't know if they're close to any negotiations. All I can see is they're gearing up for war. We're putting more and more troops there. We're putting people more and more on the ground there. We're threatening more and more and more. Right? I mean, who really controls the Straits of Hormuz? President Trump or the Iranians? Right now, it would seem to me that the Iranians have the upper hand. Now, will that change? Possibly. All right, what about enriching uranium? You got 9 countries that have, quote, nuclear capabilities, right? How do they all get them? Well, 5 of them got it before it was even supposedly internationally stopped from doing so, before they had rules about this. See? Then 4 got them kind of after the rules. Who helped all that happen, may I ask? And at the end of the day, you go, how did a North Korea get nukes? And if the North Koreans aren't blowing everybody up with nukes, in other words, mutual destruction, why do we think Iran would? Well, Iran's way worse than North Korea. They are? How are the Iranians way worse than North Korea? How are the Iranians way worse than China or Russia? Right? I'm just saying, very, very strange indeed. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene is in the news. We'll talk about her coming up. You are listening to the one and only Liberty Roundtable Live.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
Cybercrime is exploding. Take Sarah from Sweet Delights, whose world crumbled after having to close with not being able to bounce back. Small businesses are prime targets, but the right strategies can keep yours safe. Jay Hill, CEO of Network Providers, has co-authored The Cyber Playbook Simplifies Cybersecurity for Business Owners with Strategies to avoid costly breaches and fines. Build a strong cyber attack response. Secure your business with key protections. Cyber threats aren't slowing down, but you can stay ahead. Protect your business. Ensure its security for tomorrow. Get the Cyber Playbook today at networkprovidersinc.com/cyber-playbook or call 385-446-5500 now.
All right, don't know how to respond to all this, but I'm telling you, it's just very strange. Trump rants about Tucker Carlson, other former supporters. He says they're losers and nut jobs. That's R. Kirkwood on The New American. I'm just telling you, very strange stuff indeed. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene's one of these people. Marjorie Taylor Greene now is being interviewed all over the country, and she's warning of a, quote, GOP midterm bloodbath. Whoa. Again, we're not talking about physical blood, folks. We're talking about a GOP midterm bloodbath in the elections. Former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is warning that Republicans could lose the House and possibly even the Senate in the 2026 midterms, citing voter frustration and GOP setbacks. That's ahead of November, of course. What do you think of that, folks? I just look at that and go, man, I'm disappointed. I don't even know how to respond to this, really, because I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about a lot of this. People are sick of it. It's the economy, stupid. You ever heard that? People are sick of the gas prices going just through the roof. People are sick of us being led around by the nose when it comes to war by Netanyahu and Israel. You can say, oh, Sam, it's not Israel. Okay. Well, even the New York Times now reporting that, hey, Benjamin Netanyahu told Donald attacking Iran, taking it, would be easy. Well, I don't even know, because I don't know the behind-the-scenes negotiations or discussions. Benjamin Netanyahu has, the ability to bend Donald Trump's ear more than we the people do. Right? And that leads to a lot of frustration, too. You say, Sam, you're not important enough to bend the president's ear. Well, at least I'm a voter. At least I'm a United States citizen. Trump really works for me and you, doesn't he? Not Benjamin Netanyahu. So we, the people, should certainly be able to bend his ear more so. And we're all calling for peace. We're saying we should have never entered this war in the first place. I don't see that we're stopping them from getting capabilities. Not at all. I think we've emboldened Iran big time with our actions. I mean, you look at their 10-plank discussions of what they're demanding, and they're claiming victory. They're like, hey, we control the Straits of Hormuz. You can't change that. We do. We've proven it. They're saying we're going to enrich uranium. You can't stop us. And we're scrambling, folks. What do we do next? We threatened to blow them up entirely, their whole civilization. And then they kind of laughed, and then we said, oh, we worked out a deal. Literally days later, the J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, comes back and says, we don't have a deal. Wow. All right, I'm going to turn domestic for the rest of the hour here a little bit. Honesty wins. I love this story, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, Kurt Crosby briefed us on a few of these stories over the weekend. If you don't know who Kurt Crosby is, folks, he's my former co-host. He kind of retired a little bit from radio because he'd been with me for 25 plus years, and he wanted to spend time with his grandkids, and he has a honey business to run, Raw Honey. LocalHoneyman.com is his website. We promote that. We're still great friends. I think the world of Kurt. Well, anyway, he's decided to come back in a limited fashion. So he will not be with me every day, but he will start to join me on Thursdays. Yeah. And we'll have him on Thursdays there and talk about a lot of great things with that. So that's pretty exciting in my opinion. You know, you've got Eldon Stahl that joins us once in a while on Thursdays, once a month too. Pete Sepp will be changing some of those interviews around, but we're going to get Kurt Crosby back in the mix too on Thursdays. It's exciting. It's great news. So he'll be available in kind of a, I don't know what you call it, a emeritus role or whatever you want to say, kind of a, diminished role, but yet significant in its own way. And that way he's got time for his grandkids and family and business, but he can still participate in Liberty Roundtable Live. I'm excited about it. So anyway, that's coming up, but I digress. Honesty wins, says the headline, and I love this story. Teen finds $10,000 at Chick-fil-A. And here's the best news. He returns every bit of it. You know, hey, Chick-fil-A is a Christian group, and they have some of the best teens at Chick-fil-A. They're polite. They say please. They say thank you. They say my pleasure. I mean, they really have been taught right to do the job. 18-year-old, Jaden is his name. Cintron, I think is how you say it. Jaden Cintron of Kingston, North Carolina, found $9,333 in cash during his shift. And I guess he returned it to the owners. It's great news. And they offered him a $500 reward. They're like, oh, my gosh, this is so awesome. I'm going to give you $500. The kid said, no. But then they really said, look, you could use it for your life. Come on. And he finally took the $500 reward and said, thank you. But here, in my opinion, is really the biggest part of the story, which I just find awesome. Ready? Chick-fil-A worker on why he did not keep the $10K cash. Yeah, the money was left in the restroom, and he found it as an employee. Here's what he said. Here's the reason he did not keep the money. That's not what Jesus would have done, he said. The Blaze brought that piece forward. Give them credit. Glenn Beck and company over there. Anyway, all I'm telling you is, wow, this kid works for Chick-fil-A, a Christian organization, and you hear about it and you go, no, they're really Christian, and everybody criticizes them. And at the end of the day, hey, people lost 10 grand. The employee, honest man, gets the money, gives it back. Then they try to give him $500 for doing it. And he goes, no, I don't need money. He finally took it because they said, we want to invest in your future. And then he basically said, hey, why didn't I keep the money? Because that's not what Jesus would have done. What a hero. What an example, right? This guy follows the Prince of Peace, doesn't he? Incredible. All right, I got another good news story. I don't always like to criticize Trump, folks. I like to find stories when I can praise President Donald J. Trump. And I try to do that as often as I can. They're just hard to find. But our buddy Kurt Crosby found one for me, and I dig it. Ready? Honey, I shrunk the government, says the headline. Trump quietly downsizes the federal bureaucracy. Over at the Daily Signals, where they had this piece, Jarrett Stepman, I guess, has the piece. Trump administration cuts federal workforce to smallest size since 1966. Wow. Since President Donald Trump returned to the White House, more than 352,000 federal workers have been dismissed and or have retired or otherwise left government service, ladies and gentlemen. They say without full replacement, which means government employee levels are the lowest they've ever been since 1966. Wow, you got to dig that, huh? Wow, I just think that's such cool news. I commend President Trump for this. I commend the Trump administration for this, because we really don't need so many government employees, man. Now, I wish that, they did, 365 or more than 352,000. I wish it was 3 million. Maybe not that much, but I'm just saying we've got a long way to go, baby. But I'm telling you right now, it's a start. And we're going to commend them for it. And we're going to take a victory lap and a little deep breath. We're going to go out and celebrate with a milkshake or something. And then we're going to get back to work and do it. Keep on it. Because what we really need to do is decrease the size and scope of the general government. We need to rein them in, chain them down with the Constitution. That's what we need to do. Now, many nations are struggling because they've had this one-child policy for so long now. They don't have enough youngsters to take care of the old people, and society seems to be melting down in some of those countries. Well, America's not far behind, sadly. Now that we've shipped the abortion pill across state lines, murder medication, and everything else, I got to end on this story. It's called America's Birth Dearth. America's birth dearth. Fertility rates plunge to unprecedented levels in 2025. This is a sad story. But they say the U.S. birth rate hits historic lows in 2025, the CDC reports. The U.S. has experienced a decline in birth rates with a total of 3,600,000 births, marking a 1% decrease from the previous year. Wow. It's 1.57 babies per woman, right? Wow. 2.1 is necessary for population stability. So now we have to rely on immigration just to replace ourselves enough to not melt down as a society. Now you say, well, how does a woman have 1.57 kids? She doesn't. What happens is, even if you have 2 kids, basically, since some children die, some children never have children, right, etc., you got to have more than 2 to replace the 2 that made them, right? Anyway, all I can tell you is this is a sad story, though. In America, we're way below replacement level. It's a record decline in birth rates, folks. We need to bring back families. We need men and women to marry and have fidelity to one another, love one another, and bring children into this world. And when they bring children into this world, I hope they teach them to follow the Prince of Peace. You know, they say, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don't let your babies grow up to be warriors. We want peace, folks. Let your babies grow up to be followers of God Almighty, okay? But anyway, we really need to bring back having children. The problem is, we're told that it's so expensive. There's new numbers out. I can't get into them today, but there's new numbers out about how expensive it is to raise children. You can do it inexpensively, folks. I promise. I've done it. I've only got 8 kids, so I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. I don't spend near the amount of money they claim it takes. Children are a blessing from God Almighty. I can tell you that. I'm Sam Bushman. Thanks for listening. LibertyRoundtable.com, LibertyNewsRadio.com. We need to focus on this, folks. God save the Republic of the United States of America, and we need to help. Are you in? God bless.